Hi, I'm Rick Keeler. Thanks for joining me. I remember the first time I advised a client to invest a portion of his stock portfolio in international stocks. He told me, "Rick, I can't do that. It's just un-American." That was 25 years ago, and how times have changed. The reason I've never recommended that a person own just U.S. stocks in a portfolio is the same reason I wouldn't recommend owning just one company's stock. It makes as much sense to me to diversify amongst countries as it does companies. The question then becomes, how much of a person's stock portfolio should be in international stocks? For many years, the standard thinking of portfolio managers was not much. It was, and to some degree still is, common to see 80% of a portfolio's equity allocation in U.S. stocks. When you consider that the U.S. accounts for far less than 80% of the global market capitalization, that's the net worth of the world, so to speak, that's never made a lot of sense to me. So in the 1980s, I remember that U.S. companies accounted for about 2/3 of the global capitalization. So accordingly, we weighted our stock portfolios with 2/3 U.S. and 1/3 international. But by 1999, the U.S. had slipped to 50% of the world's wealth. So I adjusted my portfolios accordingly. The latest statistics from 2009 show the U.S. has continued its downward slide as far as its share of global market capitalization. It now accounts for just 35% of the entire global net worth. Investors who want to maintain a true global diversification of their stock portfolios will need to seriously consider reducing their U.S. allocations. Which international stocks then should be added? Well, as far as the countries, the growth is in Asia. It's just astounding. 10 years ago, Asia accounted for only 20% of global equity capitalization. Today, it's 35%. China and Hong Kong are Asia's major economic engine, and they make up 13% of the total capitalization. And Japan, even with its 20-year bear market, has the second largest country capitalization in that region of the world at 7%. Then everyone else, including India and the Mideast, makes up about 15%. We've overweighted Asia in our market models for probably about 20 years, and we've been rewarded for that. Now, Europe hasn't changed much in the last 10 years. They accounted for 28% of the capitalization in 1999. Today, they account for 25%. The other region of the globe that's now worth considering in portfolios is Latin America. They're up from 2% in 1999 to 5% today. So now the question is, well, how do I do that? How do I invest globally? Well, fortunately today there's mutual funds that invest in about every way you can imagine. There's a number that invest just in specific countries, some that invest just in specific regions, some which do invest internationally over the world, and some that are global, and I'll explain the difference here in a minute. Now, I really don't like the country funds, because I don't know which countries I should be underweighting or overweighting any more than I know which specific companies I should be investing in. And also, creating a global index using all the country funds just can be a lot of work and a lot of expense. So there's an easier way to do this that I find with regional funds. To allocate according to the global capitalization percentages that I laid out above, you're going to need to include 4 regional mutual funds in your stock portfolio. 1 U.S. fund, a European fund, an Asian fund, and a Latin American fund. The managers are going to decide which countries and companies within those regions that they're going to hold in the fund, which is what you want them to do. Now, if you'd like more simplicity, you don't want to have 4 regional funds. Another option is to hold 1 U.S. fund and 1 international fund. The international fund will decide where to invest in the world outside of the U.S. And finally, if you just have a small amount of money and you don't want the hassle of having more than one fund, pick a good global fund, a fund that will invest anywhere in the world. The difference between an international fund and a global fund is that a global fund will own U.S. stocks, where an international fund will not own U.S. stocks in the portfolio. They'll own everything else. First Eagle Global comes to mind as one of the better one-size-fits-all global funds that will invest in a mixture of countries, which include the U.S. It isn't necessary to allocate your stocks strictly according to global capitalization percentages. What matters, whether you decide to own country, regional, international, global funds, is that you diversify your stock portfolio globally. In today's world, it's a real important component of diversified investing. Thanks for joining me.